All right, let's talk about income types. What are some ways people can get paid?
W-2.
Okay, but W-2 doesn't mean crap to me. You want to know why? Because he's W-2 and no part of his income is guaranteed. He's 100% commission. So someone rolling in and say, I'm W-2'd. All right, and? My buddy Jason, self-employed, owns his own business. He's W-2'd. And? Doesn't mean crap to me. None of his income's guaranteed. Jason has an S-Corp, right? It's you can have an LLC, right? You can have an S-Corp. He's self-employed, or you can be a sole proprietor, C-Corps, but he has an S-Corp. When you have an S-Corp and you're self-employed, you can W-2 yourself. But let me use a visual here. We'll talk about income today. But so I own my own business. I have it set up as a S corporation, S-Corp. Okay? That form, that I have 2 tax returns now. We all file a 1040, right? Most of our 1040s are due sometime mid-April. I pray to God this year due to COVID, they let me push it out till, I think it was September of last year I got to push out my taxes. So if I have an S-Corp, I still have a 1040. I still have that, but I also have an 1120. All right, so this class is not about calculating self-employed income. You want to learn how to calculate self-employed income, reach out to MGIC or Radian. Our mortgage insurance partners have some really good trainings that should be available to you for free, where they teach you how to calculate self-employed income. Just know that, Beth, because you brought it up, I could have my S-Corp and I can W-2 myself. Because there's 2 ways I can pay myself when I have an S-Corp. I can receive a W-2. I can also receive a K-1. A W-2 would be I salary myself. I salary myself $1,000 a week, so 52 grand a year. Oh, damn it, that was quick math. Asia, I make $1,000 a week. How much do I make a year? All right. How much is that a month?
Oh, wait, what?
How much is that a month? You wouldn't know that. 4333.33. You run those numbers so many times, you just, someone spot checked me on that. I'm just, I'm winging it up here. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. If you take 52 divided by 12, that's what you get. No, so the S-Corp, I can give myself a salary. I don't have to, by the way. I don't have to. If I don't, then all of my income is going to show up on my K-1. A K-1 would be my distribution. My W-2 is just that. It would be salary. All right, but this is where it gets tricky, and this is where I really wanted to kind of just point it out without getting too deep. I could own my own business. I could W-2 myself $100,000 a year. But if my K-1, which is the profit at the end of the year, was negative $200,000, did I really make any money? I mean, I own this business. I'm the owner of this S-Corp, 100%. No, we have clients that do that. So you ask questions like, oh, are you self-employed? Oh, no, I W-2 myself. I don't care. That wasn't my question. Do you own your own business? Okay, awesome. Here's what I know I'll need. 2 years of your most recent business tax returns. At which point, if you're an S-Corp, I want your 1120. Right? Not everyone who's self-employed has an 1120S. Only those are set up. If you have an LLC, you may have some other different form. You may have your income show up only on your 1040. It would show up on a Schedule C. Again, we're not teaching a class on self-employed income, so I don't want to dive too much into it. What I want you to learn is that W-2 isn't a way to get paid. Maybe it is, but it isn't. Because you can be W-2'd, but you can be self-employed. You can be W-2'd and you can be 100% commission. You can be W-2'd and salaried. You can be W-2'd and hourly. So, W-2, okay. Now, if you're 1099, at that point, I know 100% you are a sole proprietor. I know that you're going to have Schedule C income on your 1040.
So W-2 is just too generalized.
Way too generalized. All W-2 tells me anymore is you are an employee of versus a sole proprietor. You're on 1099 tells me you're on your own for your taxes. You're on your own for your benefits. 1099, I need to make sure I get your Schedule C. But W-2 isn't really a way that someone gets paid. Ways people get paid, they get paid hourly. They get paid a salary. They get paid commission. They get paid bonus. And if you're self-employed, you get your profit distribution. But if you're self-employed, you could also pay yourself a salary. But just because I salary myself, when I'm the owner of the business, I still have to make sure that my business was profitable after my salary.
So when you get P&L
What's that? No, I need to get tax returns.
and P&L.
I need to get P&L to make sure, the only reason why I get a P&L is to make sure the money I made last year, I'm on par to make this year. I think my personal opinion, P&Ls are stupid. I can manipulate it. It's not finalized. That thing's not finalized until my CPA stamps it, I sign it, and we send it off to IRS. But in our industry, we get them. But what does it really mean? Now, you would hope people aren't crooked. You would hope people wouldn't manipulate for their benefit. But come on now. I mean, that's not necessarily how things operate real world. But yes, we do get a P&L. And the reason why we get a P&L is to make sure that the verified that you earned last year, you're on pace to make this year. And because of COVID, we've had to take it a step further. It's not just getting a P&L on the self-employed borrower. We want your bank statements. I want your bank statements because I want to see what type of receipts you're pulling in to make sure that that's on par to the type of receipt that you used to bring in previous years, so that you can't just manipulate a P&L. Now, if you make cash, Travus, that was his question. Travus asked, how do we help people who make cash? It's plain and simple, black and white. I love this industry because it's black and white. I love math because math don't lie. Travus, I'm just going to need to see your tax returns. Well, I don't. Okay, then you don't make any money. Yes, I do. No, you don't. I mean, it's that simple. Oh, well, I write it all off. Awesome. Cool. High five, bro. Like, you don't have to pay taxes. You also don't get a home loan.